Are Afghanistan and Pakistan heading for war? After years of growing tensions, fighting has erupted between the two countries, as Afghan forces struck Pakistani military posts in retaliation for alleged Pakistani airstrikes on the Afghan capital. Pakistan has hit back with artillery and drone strikes. But what makes the collapse in relations so significant is that Pakistan once had remarkably close ties with Afghanistan's Taliban regime, even helping to put it into power. So, what went wrong? And is war really imminent? Hello and welcome. My name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. Throughout history, countries have often backed insurgent movements in neighbouring states. This has been done for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's to weaken a rival or extend their influence over a particular ethnic or religious group. At other times, it's done to create a buffer zone that keeps a threat at arm's length. But while all this is usually done as a way to avoid direct conflict, such arrangements are rarely stable. If the insurgents fail to deliver results, support may be cut. Alternatively, if an insurgent group gains strength or even comes to power, it may no longer want to take orders from its former backers. In such cases, a relationship built on convenience can quickly sour, even leading to full-scale conflict. A good case in point is the relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan. For decades, Islamabad saw the Afghan Taliban as a strategic asset, a friendly regime in Kabul that could secure Pakistan's northern tribal territories and counter external influence to its north. But when their interests diverged, old tensions resurfaced. As a result, a once strong partnership has now turned into open conflict. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan sit side by side in South and Central Asia. The larger and more populous of the two, Pakistan is home to around 230 million people and is the world's fifth most populous country. To its northwest lies Afghanistan. Landlocked and mountainous, it has around 40 million inhabitants. While both countries are predominantly Sunni Muslim, they're ethnically diverse. However, the key group that links them and divides them are the Pashtuns. Concentrated along the shared border, they make up around half of Afghanistan's population and around 15% of Pakistan's. Maintaining strong tribal, cultural and family ties across the frontier, they're central to the politics and identity of both countries. More to the point, they sit at the heart of an enduring border dispute that shaped relations for well over a century and is at the heart of what we're seeing unfolding right now. The roots of the dispute go back to the 19th century. In 1893, British India drew the so-called Durand Line to mark its frontier with Afghanistan, a decision that cut across traditional Pashtun lands. As a result, when British rule ended and Pakistan gained its independence in 1947, Afghanistan refused to accept the border, arguing that it should control all Pashtun areas. As Pakistan rejected this, the disagreement would poison relations for decades to come. Indeed, even as regimes changed in Kabul, passing from monarchy to republic to communist rule, Afghanistan continued to challenge the boundary and often supported Pashtun separatist groups operating in Pakistan. However, everything changed in 1979 when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Pakistan suddenly became a vital partner for the United States and Saudi Arabia that channeled weapons, money and training to Afghan fighters, the Mujahideen. From there, Islamabad's influence over Afghan affairs grew dramatically. As the Soviet Union withdrew and Afghanistan descended into civil war, Pakistan now backed a new movement that emerged from the chaos, the Taliban. Drawn mainly from Pashtun students educated in religious schools on both sides of the border, the Taliban quickly rose to power with Pakistani support. In 1996, it seized control of most of Afghanistan, and as one of the few states that formally recognised the group, Pakistan's economic, political and military support became a lifeline for the new regime. And even though the 9/11 attacks and the subsequent US invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 ended Taliban rule, it didn't break the group's ties to Pakistan, which continued to shelter Taliban fighters and provide support to the organisation. But despite the close relations that had existed, over the next few years, things began to change. Under growing US pressure, Pakistan was forced to act against Taliban militants within its borders. As Pakistani military operations in the country's Pashtun-dominated tribal areas fueled anger and resentment, a new group emerged in 2007, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP. But while the TTP shared close ethnic and ideological ties with the Afghan Taliban, its focus was entirely different. While the Afghan Taliban occasionally tried to restrain the TTP to keep good relations with Islamabad, many in Pakistan's security establishment accused the Afghan Taliban of supporting and protecting TTP fighters. As a result, every new wave of TTP attacks on Pakistani soil deepened mistrust between Islamabad and the Afghan Taliban. But the critical turning point came in 2021. As US and NATO troops withdrew from Afghanistan and the Taliban swept back into power, Pakistan expected a friendly government in Kabul that would finally clamp down on the TTP. Instead, the opposite happened. As the TTP became more active, launching one of its most intense campaigns in years, Islamabad accused the new Taliban regime in Kabul of turning a blind eye to the group's presence in Afghanistan, or even quietly supporting it. But while Pakistani officials increasingly demanded that Kabul rein in the TTP, the Afghan Taliban insisted that it was an internal Pakistani issue. All the while, the old border dispute now resurfaced. As the Taliban openly began referring to the divided Pashtun nation, Pakistan reinforced the frontier, much to Kabul's anger. Meanwhile, the Taliban started engaging with India, Pakistan's longtime rival. All this meant that by the start of 2025, relations were at their lowest point in decades. As intermittent skirmishes, drone strikes and disinformation campaigns intensified, what had long been a shadow conflict was now turning into open hostility. And it's all this that's fed the latest crisis. The turning point came in October 2025 when Pakistan reportedly carried out a series of airstrikes on Afghan soil, including the capital, Kabul, in an attempt to target the TTP's leader, Nur Wali Masood. But while Pakistan claimed to have eliminated key commanders, a claim denied by the TTP, Kabul immediately condemned the strikes as a violation of its sovereignty and vowed to retaliate. As a result, 2 nights later, Taliban forces attacked Pakistani border posts in Helmand province, killing several soldiers and reportedly capturing 2 positions. From there, Pakistan's army then responded with heavy artillery and tank fire, claiming to seize 19 Afghan posts in return. With multiple clashes now reported along different stretches of the border, the number of casualties is mounting on both sides. To make matters even worse, Pakistan's internal conflict with the TTP has also intensified. A deadly raid on a militant hideout left dozens dead, while shortly after, the TTP launched a coordinated series of attacks that killed 20 troops and several civilians. Combined with the border fighting, this all suggests that the situation is steadily spiralling out of control. On top of all this, tensions between the countries have also been inflamed by the news that Afghan's foreign minister has just paid his first official visit to India. While seen as a diplomatic breakthrough for the Taliban, which remains largely unrecognised internationally, Islamabad was especially angered by a joint statement between Afghanistan and India that included remarks on Kashmir that went against Pakistan's position on the issue. So, what happens now? At this stage, both sides are under enormous pressure to avoid full-scale war. Saudi Arabia, which recently signed a mutual defence pact with Pakistan, has called for calm. So too has Qatar, which maintains good relations with both countries. Likewise, China has also urged restraint, fearing that continued instability could threaten its regional economic projects. As things stand, the most hopeful outcome would be a diplomatic de-escalation, perhaps brokered by Beijing, Riyadh or Doha, leading to a temporary ceasefire or border management agreement. But even if that happens, the core issue of the TTP's presence in Afghanistan and continued claims of support from Kabul will continue to sour relations, thus making any ceasefire extremely fragile. Of course, there's also a chance that Kabul may eventually decide to crack down on the TTP to ease pressure from Islamabad. The problem is that risks splitting the Taliban's ranks, creating divisions between the Pashtun communities on the two sides of the border, and thus weakening the Taliban's control. But of course, the real fear is that all this could mark the start of a prolonged border conflict between the two countries. If this were to happen and Pakistan tried to push deeper into Afghan territory, the Taliban would almost certainly respond with guerrilla tactics and counterattacks. Such a conflict would devastate local communities, cripple border trade and stretch both armies thin. A darker possibility is that it could even spark a wider proxy war, drawing in regional powers like Iran or India, while militant groups in Pakistan would continue to exploit the chaos for their own agenda. In the meantime, what's now clear is that the confrontation between Afghanistan and Pakistan has entered a dangerous new phase. What began as disputes over militant sanctuaries has escalated into open conflict, marking the final collapse of a decades-old patron-client relationship. Meanwhile, Pakistan's decision to strike Afghan territory and Kabul's forceful response have turned simmering tensions into direct military confrontation. Whether the conflict now stabilises or widens will depend on a combination of diplomacy, domestic pressures and actions against militant groups. But for the meantime, the fighting between Pakistan and Afghanistan has highlighted how supporting insurgent movements, even against traditional foes, can often backfire. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.